Okay. This is the video, the instructional video on how to make the apple fritter breakfast casserole that the 8th graders are going to be using for the next rolling scones. I have, you can probably see here, I have already preheated my oven to 375 degrees. I have also sprayed my casserole pan. Now, for this demonstration, because I didn't want to waste a lot of our materials, our ingredients, I'm only going to make a half a recipe. So this is a small casserole pan. You're going to be using one of the large 9x12 or 9x13 pans, and you're going to follow the recipe on the sheet exactly. I'm going to be using half of that since I'm creating half of the recipe. But you will use the large pan and the full recipe. Okay, I've already assembled all of my ingredients. Okay, that's always a good thing. First, I have washed my hands, and since I know I'm going to be touching food, I do have gloves on today. Okay, all right. Now, one of the first things that you're going to have to do is open the can of the cinnamon rolls. Okay, and in order to do that, if you haven't done it before, you peel off the paper. And this is the fun part. Okay. You just whack it really hard on the side of the table, and it splits open like that, okay? And inside here, okay, is one small container that, it's just a cardboard container that contains icing. And you want to save that kind of for later. I usually, excuse me, if I were going to icing my stuff on the first day, I would go ahead and put it in a cup and set it on the stove, not under any direct heat, but just to pick up a little bit of heat to make it softer. Some of the containers they come in might not be wrapped in plastic like this. It might just be a little, excuse me, a little tube. Okay, so then the directions say that we chop the cinnamon rolls into 6 to 8 pieces. Okay, so let me slide this around a little bit so you can see what's going on here. And I just cut 2 or 3 of them at a time, and I just kind of cut them in a cross and then another cross. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kind of separate them out a little bit while I put them in this bowl. Okay. Now again, I'm using only one tube of cinnamon rolls, and the directions call for 2 for the full recipe. And again, I'm just cutting them in half like a cross and then doing that again. So that the pieces are pretty small. Okay. And I do a couple of cinnamon rolls at one time. It works pretty good that way. Last batch here. Now you don't want to try to squeeze and smush them too much. You want them to kind of separate themselves pretty well. Okay, so that's done. The next thing it says to open a can of apples and chop them up into small bite-sized pieces. Now, you're going to use a whole can of the apple pie filling. Okay, since I'm only using half a recipe, I only need half a can. So what I'm going to do is after I open the can, I'm going to take out about the half that I need for the recipe, that size that I'm doing. But since you're using a whole can, what you can do is you can just take your knife and chop these, because that's what it wants you to do, chop these pieces up smaller, just right in there. Just chop with your knife. But since I'm only using half, I'll do my chopping in this bowl. Now you don't want it to chop to the point where it's applesauce. Pretty small pieces so that you can distribute them pretty evenly throughout your recipe. I think that's probably about half. Okay, but again, you're going to use the whole can. I'm only using a half a recipe here. Cutting the recipe in half. Okay, so then I'm going to add the apples in there. I'm going to add my brown sugar. Okay, now when you measure brown sugar, you have to make sure that you pack it down tight. Brown sugar is always measured packed tight. White sugar is where you take the knife across the top, but brown sugar, you pack it in very tight. After you've done that, you can crumble it up a little bit if you want to. Okay, and then it called for a portion of melted butter. I add my melted butter, and I also add some cinnamon. You're going to add 2 teaspoons. Since I'm only doing half a recipe, I'm only using 1. So 1 teaspoon. Of course, that you have to measure off. And you want to mix until everything is really well combined. Now there's a good chance that you're going to have to touch some of this casserole a little bit when you go to put it in the pan, so that's why I wanted to make sure to wear the gloves. But once you just have everything blended really well, okay, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of stirring to do that. Once you have done that, then you are going to put everything in your sprayed, your prepared casserole dish, okay? And kind of spread it around a little bit, make it pretty even. And it looks kind of small now, but you know, the cinnamon roll pieces will puff up after they're baked for a little bit, okay? So then what we're going to do is we're going to place it in the oven. The recipe calls for between 40 and 50 minutes. I found that to be a little bit too much, even on a full recipe. So you want to back that back to about 30 to 35 minutes. Okay, so you would put this in here and set your timer. Okay, I set it for about 31 minutes. That way I can check, and if it needs a few more minutes, then that's what we'll do. Now, you are going to be preparing this casserole and baking it the day before the Rolling Scones cart actually rolls on Friday. You will not, because the last direction is to take the glaze and cover it. You will not be doing that. You're going to bake this on Thursday. We're going to take it out of the oven. We'll put some foil on it. And what I'll do is Friday morning before you guys get here, I will have this on and the oven on and ready to go, and pop it back in for just a little bit so that we can put the glaze on and it'll be nice and warm for Friday morning. Okay, so and then that's it. So it's a really pretty simple recipe. It just works best if you have all your stuff out and ready to go. Again, I showed you a half a recipe. You're doing a full size recipe in a big pan.